Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about makeup brushes versus a beauty blender or any other brand of makeup sponge that you may have. And we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each one, and is one superior over the other? Stay tuned, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so the first thing that pops into my mind is when you are trying to decide which one you're going to use. And by the way, I recommend that you have both because all foundations are not created equal, and some foundations are better suited to one or the other. I'm going to give you an example. I've been taking a trip down the nostalgia lane like crazy lately, you guys. I've been repurchasing products that I used to have a long time ago, purchasing products that have been around forever that I've never had, but everybody else remembers them and talks about them and makes references to them. I have no frame of reference because I've never tried it. So many people, this is going to sound so weird, but so many people, when discussing what is the worst foundation of all time, this is the foundation that they talk about. And I went out and bought it. So this is what I have on my face right now. This is Maybelline Dream Matte Mousse. Yes, they still make this. It comes in a glass jar, and it's really, really thick. I mean, you would kind of expect, being in a glass jar, you would expect it to be like a cream. No, that sucker ain't going anywhere. I could hold that jar all day and it's not going to move. It's very, very thick. And so I didn't really know what to expect other than the fact that people don't like it. But hey, you know what? I think it looks pretty decent. Why though? It's supposed to be this terrible foundation that everybody hates. Why? Because I used a beauty blender with it. If you have any foundations that are thick or dense or super pigmented, Beauty Blender or any makeup sponge is what is going to suit that foundation best. So maybe the only reason why I'm perfectly fine, happy with the outcome of this foundation is because of this. Because maybe when this came out back in the day, we didn't even use makeup sponges back then. The only people that probably ever used a sponge was professional makeup artists, but everyday people, heck, back when this came out, people didn't even use makeup brushes. They used their fingers for everything. So this type of consistency would not really work with a brush or your fingers. So maybe that's why. Maybe, it's not so bad after all, because I like it okay. But then again, one of the things that I've heard about this is, when you check back in a few hours, it's going to look a lot different. It's gonna start to transform on your face. So I'll have to wait and see on that. But yeah, and the opposite is true in terms of what is good for what. If you have a very thin, liquidy product, probably a brush is going to be your best bet. Why? Because the Beauty Blender or any other brand of makeup sponge that you own is a sponge, and it's going to soak up the product more easily. Whereas when I used this, I just kind of dabbed it on top, and the product sort of sat on top of the sponge until I blended it in. Whereas if I use a liquid, especially a really liquidy liquid, if you know what I mean, it's just going to absorb right into the sponge, and I'm going to lose half my product. So a makeup sponge is not going to be very economical in terms of using it with a liquid foundation. Now, a lot of people do, and I guess, they like certain aspects of it, so they don't care. But from an economic standpoint, a brush is going to be better. All right, so something else to take into consideration is with a makeup sponge, eventually this is going to get tears in it, it's going to get holes in it, it's just going to be beat up and not really that effective, and it's going to have to be tossed. So from an environmental standpoint, that's not good because that's more junk in our landfills. Whereas with the brush, I have some brushes that I've had for like 10 years and they're still going strong. They still perform wonderfully. My MAC brushes, those are an investment. You know, they're a little more expensive when you buy them, but they really hold up over time. And so because you're going to continuously use it, it's not going to end up in a landfill. From an environmental standpoint, a makeup brush is a better choice. From a hygienic standpoint, when it comes to staining, some people say that makeup sponges are difficult to clean if you use them with a pigmented foundation. Well, the same thing can be true of a brush. And my solution for that is what I use to clean them with. I can remove all the staining from my Beautyblender and my brushes by using specific products that are more effective for that. If you go to Sephora, they have an actual Beautyblender cleanser, and I think they have a solid and a liquid, or is it just a solid? I'm not sure because I've never bought it, because I found a dupe for it, and that dupe is Tone Bar Soap, the original. And also I have found some other soaps now that also work because they have the same types of ingredients in them as the Tone does. There's one by Zest that I've been using, and then there's one that they sell at Family Dollar. I think it's Model is their brand name of soap that they sell, but you want to basically look for things with cocoa butter, and that will help you removing staining. But I've done videos about that subject before, so I don't want to go off on a tangent here. What else? When it comes to getting into difficult areas in your face, like right in here, around your nose, through here, around the eye area, there's nothing like a Beautyblender because you can just flip it over and get right in those little cracks and crevices. And another great thing about makeup sponges is you can do light layers. You can just slowly put a little bit on at a time and just keep adding more and more and more until you get the amount of coverage that you want. Whereas with a brush, you get quite a bit of coverage right away. And once it's on, you can't really take it off. So the Beautyblender or a makeup sponge, I feel, is superior for that reason. What are some of the things that are pros for the makeup brush? I would say time. If time is a factor to you and you only have X amount of time to get out the door, you have to be at work, you have to be at school, you have to be dropping the kids off at a daycare center, or whatever you have to do, a makeup brush is going to be way faster because, like I said, with the sponge, you're only putting on a little bit at a time and you have to keep adding more and more, so it's more time consuming. Brushes are much faster. You can get the job done in probably half the time with a makeup brush, so that's something to take into consideration. When it comes to cost, I feel like it's pretty much an even situation because there's the Beautyblender, which is a fairly expensive sponge, but now there are all these competitors at a lower price point. It used to be that this was your only option, so the sponge was always the expensive thing to get, but that's not the case anymore. So many companies have these makeup sponges now that that's cost isn't really an issue anymore. And of course, with makeup brushes, it's always been that way, that there are things at every price point, some better than others. And so I feel like, you know, it's pretty much an even situation when it comes to cost. But in the end, or to wrap this up, which is better? It really depends on what foundation you're using. So I recommend that you have both. If money is an issue, you can get some of the Beautyblender dupes that are out there. I have heard some of them are very good. I've tried a few, but I always come back to the Beautyblender because I feel like this is better than what I've tried, but I haven't tried every single sponge that's out there. And when it comes to brushes, I feel like it's a lot easier to get an affordable brush than it is to get an affordable Beautyblender dupe, because the Beautyblender dupes that I've tried aren't the same. There's some differences, whereas it's very easy to get affordable brushes. This one that I've been waving around throughout the whole video is a Morphe brush, but I also love my e.l.f. brushes, my Real Techniques brushes, my Renewal brushes from Rite Aid. I have tons of affordable brushes, my Wet n Wild brushes. I have loads of them that I really like. And I don't feel like it's that important to spend a lot of money on brushes unless you just want one really nice collection of brushes and you don't ever have to buy any new ones. Then maybe it would be worth it to spend the extra money on something like MAC, and that you'll have for years and years to come, and you won't probably have to replace for a very long time. So I think it's important to have both, because if I had purchased this foundation and I didn't have a Beautyblender, I think it would have been a disaster trying to apply it. I don't think I would have been able to do it with my fingers or with a brush because it's so thick and the texture is quite strange. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button. And if you have any opinions about what I just talked about, leave them in the comments down below. And I will see you in the next video. Bye guys, thanks for watching.